Um, have you ever met someone who's worn a mask her entire life? That's a question that I'm going to ask you. Take a moment to ponder on the question. Have you ever met someone who's worn a mask her entire life? Since I'm not getting a reaction, let me quickly move to the next. Can you try say something with me? Yes? Listen to what I'm saying very, very carefully. It's 4 words. You just have to listen carefully and say it back to me. Yes? Can you do that? Show of hands if it's a yes. Yes. Great. And also, it's not in English. It's in a different language. Show of hands. Okay. Ninakku nee maatrame ullu. Some of you just muttering, aren't you? Okay, great. That's the title of my first story. Yes, you'll know what it means by the end of the story. This is a true story. The characters in the story are not fictitious, they are not coincidental, and everything is real. This was the last day of the social studies exam. A young child was running through the corridors of a school building. This child was being chased by 3 grown boys. The child was getting weak with the running. Yes, his shins are giving up. He's getting breathless. The vision's blurry. The heart is pounding to the point that it's aching now. Now the child falls down, and the 3 boys catch him. What he was hoping would not happen is about to happen now. They took that child to the nearest volleyball net post, strip him down, tie him with his school tie and belt, and then the abuse begins. After a lot of kicking, punching, and everything terrible that you can imagine. At one point in time, the child looks up and says, "I want to go home." But it was a deaf ear from those abusers. After they were done for about 40 minutes, they let the child lie there. He looks up to the sky and asks, "Why? Why me? Why?" Now it starts to rain. And the water, in a way, cleanses that child. The splats on the earth and the water running down his body is purging him. It's also whispering and telling the child, "You're very, very late. You need to go home now." The child picks himself up and walks home. The sky is heavy, pouring down on him. Once he gets home, he tells his grandmother what happened. The grandmother does 3 things. Number 1, she looks him in the eye and says, "This is just a dream, and a bad dream." Number 2, she undresses the child, takes that class 3 school uniform, puts it into a metal bucket and sets it on fire. Number 3, she takes this big basin of hot water, pours Dettol in it, and makes the child squat in it. At this point in time, the child is wincing in pain. And she shushes the child. And then she said, "It's going to be over." Now she feeds the child. She's putting him to sleep. And then she says, "You are special. The world is going to be cruel. Don't give up. Ninakku nee maatrame ullu." It's a sentence in Malayalam which means, "You are all you have." I think that's the first time an incident like that happened in this child's life. The grandmother asked the child, "Why do you think this happened to you?" And the child, with the greatest conviction, told the grandmother, "You sent me into a school with boys. They are all boys, and I am a girl. I'm a girl, Grandma. I'm a girl." She said, "Okay, okay." And then she said, "Go to sleep. When you wake up, you will not remember anything." one thing that stayed with the child forever is that line. You are all you have. You need to rescue yourself. I think that's the first time I admitted to my grandmother, I'm a girl. The world looks at sex and gender as the same. According to the World Health Organization, sex is what you're born with. It's your body parts, biology. But gender is something that's placed on you by people around you. The world likes to call me a trans woman. I'm not too big of a fan of that word, trans, the prefix. I like to believe that it's a way that society uses to marginalize women like me and exclude women like me. I'm woman, more woman than any other woman you know. And that is enough. And if you have a problem with that, I'm sorry, it's not my problem, your problem. While my parents thought that they should dress me up like a boy, because they always thought that sex is equal to gender, I knew that I was always happy dressing up in girl clothes, the happiest. Please note that I match the accessories. Do you notice the red and the red clip on the hair? This was me when I was young. The story is very different today. Extremely different. Life is different. Now, somebody like me, when you know for a fact that I know who I am, while the society expects me to be something else, struggles with something called as gender dysphoria. It's the term in psychology which terms gender distress. I feel an extreme distress in my body. It's literally your soul scratching against the inner walls of your body, wanting to come out. It literally means you don't want to live anymore. You feel smothered and suffocated. It means that you have to wear this mask for the sake of the world. And this mask triggers a lot of hate to oneself, a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness, a lot of pain, to the point that you want to end your life. Suicide seems sweet. It's going to be over once you end your life. And mind you, killing yourself becomes an everyday thought because you don't like the life that you're living. You look up to him and you ask him, when is it going to be over? Are you just toying with me? I was teaching a class one day and I experienced a severe pain in my abdomen. I was rushed into the hospital and the doctor there told me that you have stage 3 cancer. I don't mean any disrespect to the cancer patients, cancer survivors, families that took care of cancer patients. But when the doctor said that your life is going to end in 8 months, I looked up and said, yes, thank you. It's going to be over. It felt like a ready solution to me simply because in my faith, committing suicide is losing passage to heaven. And I didn't want to lose that passage. I want to be one with my Creator. So when this happened, I thought he finally made a way. It's going to be over very soon. I went through treatment, and guess what? They said you're cancer-free. Are you kidding me? Is what I wondered. No, really, are you kidding me? The one question that people often ask me is, considering the predicament that you're in, how can you still have a faith? How can you be so strong spiritually? I like to believe that my faith kept me alive. And faith doesn't have to lock horns with my identity. It can nurture it and support it. I also like to believe that the second lease to life that I got is the heavens nudging me and telling me, this time, you live the life you want. You get a second lease, a second chance to life. And I was like, wow. And that's when I started to transition. While the cancer story is a painful story, I knew that was a cause to the effect that I live today. Faith is something that perpetuated life in me. I felt the desire to live after that. Have you ever been to, are you afraid of airplanes, anybody? Hands up, show of hands. Afraid of airplanes? I really can't see because bright lights, but I'm hoping you were raising your hands. Is anybody here afraid of airports? I'm hoping there are no lights. Thank you for the no. Yes, no hands up, right? But I was somebody who's afraid of airports. This was a story of 2 years ago. I was at an airport. I got my boarding pass. It was at the beginning of my transition. Yes, even though I used to dress feminine, I still wasn't convinced about taking the door which said female. So I went through the door which said male, and this guard who saw me looked at me and frowned. He takes his body scanner, scans it over me, yes, and now when he gets to the shoulders, it starts to beep. I couldn't understand why it was beeping. He couldn't understand why it was beeping. He asked me to take off my sweater. I obliged. I took it off. At this point in time, he thinks it's okay to hold the collar of my t-shirt and look in. And I was feeling extremely uncomfortable at this point in time. Now he puts the scanner down and he thinks it's okay to put his hands on me and run it down on my body while he cups me. At the end of it, he had the cheek to ask me, "Maza aaya?" And this time, I was boiling. And in the most inarticulate Hindi, I said, "अगर आपके माँ, बहन या बीवी के साथ कोई ऐसा करेगा, उनको मजा आएगा." Translation: if somebody does the same thing to your mother, sister, or your wife, would it be fun? To this, he exploded. He wanted to use his entire authority on me, started yelling at the top of his voice. The entire bay in the airport was looking at me. Now the senior officer steps in. He asks, "What's happening?" I tell him my side of the story. He asks the guard what's happening, and the guard tells him, because the scanner beeped, he had to do a body check. Yes, and then I explained what was going on with me. To that, he said, "You took the door which said female." He looked at the guard and said, "Next time, you would allow this person to take any door that he or she wants." While I was leaving, I looked at that officer and I said, "Thank you for your service." To that he responded, "I want you to be as brave as my men and women who serve this country." I said, "Thank you," and I walked away. This is a story of true allyship. While I stand here today, I want to thank you for your service to all the allies. You have the most neutral voice. Why? Women will speak for women. LGBTQ will speak for LGBTQ, but it's the allies, when they speak, it's a stronger perspective. How many of you like Game of Thrones? Show of hands? Great. One of my favorite characters in the TV show is this lady called Elena Tyrell. And to the allies in the room, I tell you, thank you for not being a sheep. Thank you for being a dragon. To the politicians in this country, since we are no longer criminals and we are citizens, I have 3 questions for you. Question 1. When will protection take precedence over brutality and censorship? Question 2. When will healthcare and education reform affect this community? Question 3. What can you do about the minutiae and red tape around document change for trans people. To the governments of the world, when you use religion as a form of government, it becomes fascism. It is a human rights priority and a development imperative to curb hate. To the teachers, if there are any teachers in the audience, did you know 66% of LGBTQ kids go through severe abuse when they're in school? Early sensitization can definitely help. If you can care for the child, yes, before you change the child, I think your legacy as an educator will be a lot more stronger. To people in the media, a lot more accurate representation would definitely help. Our stories are strong stories, but a lot more facts can help. A lot more influence can help. Don't count the number of pages sold with a story on top. To artists, particularly writers and filmmakers, and I'm going to say this only once, this is no longer a joke. Stop using this community as satirical devices and objects of caricature. It's not funny anymore. Use your pen, use your lens to tell stories that ignite change. Embrace diversity and spark the kind of revolution that this country needs. To people in the corporates, I don't know how many of you are from corporates. I don't know if you use phrases and words like authenticity, culture, courageous principles, anti-discrimination as punchlines. Because if you're using them as punchlines, then you're just not practicing what you're preaching. If you are a talent organization, ask yourself these questions. What have you done in terms of policy for these professionals? Question number 2, what are you doing to bring in awareness and sensitization around the subject within your organization? Question number 3, from your hiring to learning and development to awareness to exit, the entire life cycle, are you covering it for somebody like me? Question number 4, when will you be bold enough to walk the pride? Stand by your professionals. Please understand, you are gearing and preparing for a diverse workforce, a multi-generational workforce. And the imperative word or the important word is diverse. You lose out on a lot if you don't gear up, if you don't change that perception. To the parents of kids who have, to the parents of kids who are LGBT, who are on the spectrum. And I'm going to say this in the most gentlest of way. Don't lose your child at the expense of what people will say. I think "log kya sochenge" is the worst disease in this country. It has kept us from pursuing our dreams, loving the people we want to love, and chasing our aspirations. To children who think they don't fit, the one thing that I will tell you is read more, top that class, be so good with your academics that nobody will keep an opportunity from you. To people who are LGBT professionals, the one line that I have for you is, what are you doing for others in the community? And I feel for you. Trust me, I do. I know people are constantly judging you with an extra lens. And I know you have to work twice as hard to get to wherever you want to be. Your journey is tough, but let me assure you, once you get to the summit, the view is breathtakingly beautiful. I am in a relationship with somebody, and when he listens to this speech, he is an intelligent, funny, heterosexual, since that's important, witty man. And I know for a fact that after he listens to this particular speech, I know what exactly he's going to say. He hasn't heard the speech yet. He's going to say, babe, you spoke with a lot of passion and conviction, but it also felt that you were giving all of us a scolding. Women like me, men like me, people like me, our dreams are not very different from yours. It's just the same. I think relationships should be strong, should have a lot of conversation in it, should have a lot of love, happiness, just like a Nescafe ad with two people in it. Doesn't matter, man and a woman, man and a man, woman and a woman, person and a person. When I say my dreams are no different, what I mean is someday, I want my mother and my friends to dress me up. I want my father to walk me down an aisle in a big, to marry the man I love. Kids, a kitchen which is really big, a red colored door, a tire swing, and a Labrador brown coat running to me in slow motion. Why is he running to me in slow motion? Don't ask me, it's my dream. As somebody who works in learning and development, I strongly believe that knowledge is not equal to skill, and learning is not equal to behavior. That said, one of the reasons why I'm doing this talk is my way of telling the world that people like us exist, and gender dysphoria is a problem. And we have the right to live, and we're looking for allies. I'm hoping that learning becomes behavior, proponents of change, the kind of behavior which will encourage people within my community to step out of the closet, which will curb the fear and pain that they're dealing with, which will inspire them to finally take off their mask. I asked you a question right at the beginning of my talk. Have you ever met someone who's worn a mask her entire life? Hi, my name is Sophia David. Nice to meet you. Thank you.